Hi, I'm Jessica from Tasty Meditation, Tales from a Gluten-Free Kitchen. If you've been following my blog or my social media channels, you may have seen that my husband and I recently went on our honeymoon in Italy, and it was so inspiring, and we had the most wonderful time eating gluten-free food all around Rome that we decided that the second we got back, I would order a pasta machine to bring a little bit of Italy home with us. Now, while we were in Italy, we took a basic gluten-free fettuccine making class, and I decided that with my knowledge of gluten-free flour and cooking, that I wanted to create my own pasta recipe and also be able to translate that into various different stuffed pasta dishes. Now, we've been having a lot of different dinner parties so that I could work on these and perfect them all, and I'm really excited to share them with you. So thank you to everyone who asked for the recipes, and not just the recipe, but also an instructional video, because I know it can be pretty difficult sometimes to make something for the first time, especially if it's a new piece of equipment or you're not sure how to work with the dough. So here we are. Today we're going to be making fettuccine, ravioli, and tortellini. A few things, I've posted the recipe along with this video, and you might be noticing a couple of things. One is that I work with a lot of different flours, and I don't have one specific mix. My philosophy on this is that when you're creating something like a cake that's light and fluffy versus a really hearty bread, you're going to use a totally different set of flour combinations for each of those. And all of these different gluten-free flours have different properties to them. So I really like being able to tweak things in very small ways, adding a little bit of extra, maybe a higher protein content, or a little bit extra flour that has more starchiness and airiness to it. So I know that might look a little bit daunting, but I promise you it's going to be so easy and so worthwhile. Now, the other thing you might be noticing is that I don't measure things in cups, tablespoons, and teaspoons. I mostly measure in grams, sometimes ounces. The way that I do this is with my digital kitchen scale. If you don't use one of these, it is going to revolutionize the way that you bake, especially with gluten-free baking, because you'll be surprised how many different ways you can measure 1 cup of flour or even a teaspoon. It can be vastly different depending on how much you're packing the flour in there. And sometimes if it's just a gram or 2 off when it comes to an ingredient that you're measuring with a teaspoon, it can make a big difference in your recipe. So invest in one of these. I'm pretty sure you're going to be really happy. All right, so let's get to the rolling of the pasta. So this is my dough. What I did was I measured out the different flour ingredients and I combined them. I added some boiling water, mixed it, and then let it set for a bit, added my eggs and mixed it with my hands. Now this dough is a little bit sticky, and it's designed to be that way because when I roll it out, I'm gonna be dusting it pretty liberally with tapioca starch. Now, why tapioca starch? One of the things that we want to think about is not just, dusting this so that it rolls through the pasta machine easier, but normally when we're making pasta, most of us probably dump the pasta water out, but the pasta water is really great for thickening sauces, and tapioca starch in particular is excellent for thickening sauces. So that's why I use this specifically. The recipe is designed so that you will get a little bit more tapioca starch in the dough, but also it's going to go into the pasta water as well. Now, my machine has 9 different settings. 10. It starts at 0 and goes to 9. So I'm going to start at 0 here, and I have this little circular thing, roughly. You're going to be pretty rough with all of these measurements here. And I start to roll it out. I'm going to fold this in half. And maybe if I want it to be really neat, depending on what I'm making, if I'm making fettuccine, I want it to be pretty neat. If I'm making, say, ravioli or tortellini, then the edges can be, a little rough because I'm not, I'm going to be cutting off the sides of things a bit with those ones. So I noticed that this was getting just a tiny bit sticky, so I'm just going to dust it lightly a little bit more. I rolled it through once. On the 0 setting, I'm changing to 1. Now, if you make this dough way too big, if you make your initial chunk that you're rolling through too big, it's just going to be really difficult to work with. I think that this is a pretty nice size. And you can see already that's holding really, really well. That's one thing that I worked really hard on for this recipe, is I wanted it to be sturdy. Now I'm rolling through on the third setting, and I think that one of the mistakes that people make is thinking that we need to use all 9 settings, and we don't, because ultimately we don't have, oh, this is so pretty. This is a really great one. So I'm gonna set this aside. I just rolled it through the third setting, and that's where I'm gonna stop. There we go. So when you are making pasta without gluten, you have to realize that the gluten's gone. The thing that makes it sticky is gone. So ultimately I want to roll it as thin as possible, but I want it to hold together, because pasta that doesn't hold together is not going to be fun. So I'm going back to 0. I might go through this just a tiny bit faster now, just for time's sake. But I'll go through it again. I make just a little square, a little rectangle. I roll it through 0 again. If I'm noticing it's a little wet, a little sticky, I put a tiny bit of extra tapioca starch on it. I'm rolling through on setting number 1. Setting number 2. And setting number 3. There we go. So I'm going to roll out another sheet or 2, because we're making so many different things, and just continue talking and chatting a bit. So one of the questions that I've already gotten is, can you use a different, like, cup for cup kind of flour for this recipe? And here's the thing, I don't know, because there are so many different cup for cup brands on the market, but I guarantee you it's going to be very different than my recipe here. And I worked, see, it's a little uneven, so I'm just going to roll it through one more time like this. So I've worked really hard on this specific flour combination, and I don't know what it's going to turn out as if you use something that's different. Every all-purpose flour mix, every cup for cup thing is going to have different properties and different qualities. So I do highly recommend that you use my recipe if you're using my recipe, you know? Here we go. Another thing that I found out, you might notice we are not in a kitchen. We are in my living room because I live in New York City and kitchen counter space is really small. One of the things that I found out is that if you're doing all of this pretty close to an air conditioner, the pasta is going to dry out fairly quickly. So just be aware of the conditions of the space that you are in when you are working with all of this. Let's see, let's do one more. So please feel free to write me with any questions that you may have. I love questions. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Tasty Meditation, and you can also find my blog at tastymeditation.com. We are almost done rolling this. One more. And this one's not the most even. It's a little bit lopsided, but that's okay. I might use this one for my tortellini. So there we go. We have just rolled our pasta. Wonderful work. These could be really great pasta sheets for lasagna if you wanted to make that as well. So each pasta machine is a little bit different. You might find that you're going to roll through on different numbers for yours. I'm going to change. There we go, maybe. All right, I'm gonna change the setting, there it is, to the fettuccine roller. And I'm gonna take this one because it was so really nice and even and beautiful. It was pretty much the same width the entire way. And I'm gonna dust it more with tapioca starch, because here's the thing, is that you don't want your fettuccine to stick together in the pot. It might be a thing that has happened to you with, you know, whatever brand of pasta you've been using and making at home. And I found that really if I dust it really nicely right before rolling, it really holds up together well, each and every strand as I'm cooking. So I'm gonna put this on my arm and roll it through very gently, making sure I get, as even and centered as possible so it doesn't end up lopsided. I want to kind of help these along out to the side so it doesn't bunch up underneath my machine. Oh, it's already looking really beautiful. And I don't want this part to stretch out too much, which is why I'm really trying to control that going through. And here we go. Oh, this is really, really beautiful fettuccine that we just made. So I'm going to lay this out and kind of separate the strands a bit and save that for later. If I was just making fettuccine right now, I'd be boiling my pasta water right about now too. Lovely. We have just mastered fettuccine. Congratulations. Let's move on to ravioli. I'm going to use these two pieces because they're pretty similar in size. And as I do this, I rolled this pretty wide here. I might roll it a little bit thinner next time, but I'm just going to make really big ravioli because that sounds fun. So I have a little bit of my ravioli filling. This is my favorite. It's a combination of ricotta, mozzarella, and Parmesan. And I'm going to space this out. This is also where you're going to want to wash your hands like a million times because the stuff is pretty sticky and it's not going to be fun continuing to work with your pasta when it's super, super sticky. There we go. So I'm going to take these other things I have really quick. I have my tapioca starch here. I have my pasta filling here. I have some egg. This is egg white and egg yolk. And then this here is just a little bit of water. So I'm gonna take my egg, dip my fingers in, and I'm just gonna go all around in between each and every one. Just really gently, not putting a whole ton on, but this is going to help make the sheets of pasta stick together. There we go. So now I'm going to maybe wash my hands again. I'm going to take my second sheet, lay it over the top, and I'm going to very gently press around the sides. And I say very gently as in like gently but also very firm because I do want these to stick. I'm going to try to decrease the amount of air in the center around that filling. And then I continue around the sides. Now, whenever I do this, I'm not being super mindful about it right now, but I do like to try to decrease the amount of pasta that I have to throw away, or the amount of pasta dough that I have to throw away. I think that in cutting this out, I'm going to be tossing quite a bit, and it's hard to reuse these because there's so much egg on it. So next time I might make my sheets a little bit thinner, as in the width. All right, so I have these. Next I take a pizza cutter. And there's some like special pasta tools that you can make, that you can use to like make some cool designs on the side, but I'm pretty simple. So I'm gonna put these aside, cut the edges here. Great. So I normally like to pick them up and just press them around the sides again to make sure that it's pretty firm. But I think that we did a really good job. And I do like really big ravioli. I think that they're quite fun. So I'm just gonna leave these to the side. I would make, however many sheets more that I would have. And just continue and then cook them off. So there we go. That is our ravioli. Next, we are moving on to tortellini. So with this one, you can use a circular cookie cutter, but for me, I live in small spaces, so I'm using the top of a wine glass because I don't have a circular cookie cutter. So this is, I believe that I wrote it down in the recipe. This size, I think, is maybe 2.5 inches or 3 inches in diameter. I think that's a pretty happy size. And I'm gonna cut out circles just like I would with holiday cookies. And what you can do with this, which is nice, is normally I take all of these scraps and I just put it back with my pile of dough and I just continue rolling them out. So I really try and use as much of the dough as possible. So now we are left with these 3 circles. I'm going to take a little bit of my ravioli filling or my tortellini filling. And really here, less is more. I get really excited with these and I just think, yeah, I want them to be full of cheese. But they get really hard to form the tortellini if it's too full and the dough might end up breaking. So go with less is more. Okay? So again, clean off your hands a bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the egg around in half a circle. Now, the other night we made 50 of these for a dinner party, and the egg white sometimes, or the egg yolk and white, the egg sometimes dries out a bit if you don't get to it quickly enough. So just be aware that you might need to put a little bit extra on later. And these, I think that they do take a little bit longer to make than ravioli. So I do recommend making them with at least one other person. We had a really fun time with 4 people just sitting around the table making tortellini together. I think it's a really wonderful way to, you know, throw a little party. So here is how we fold it. I'm going to, this is the egg side, this is the non-egg side. I'm just going to widen this out a bit. And then I fold it in half. I'm going to firmly press together here. Now I don't want to firmly press it so hard that the dough spreads out really far, but I do want it to hold it together pretty well. So there we go. That's what it looks like here. Now my husband had this really great trick. So we were trying to figure out like what would be a fun analogy to help us remember how to do this fold. And his trick was, we're gonna imagine that it's a cloak. So I'm gonna fold over the collar, fold it back, and then I'm gonna take my thumb in the middle and I'm going to wrap the outsides of the coat around the front. So I love that. I'll take a tiny dab of water on one side of this tortellini, press it together gently just so that it holds. Maybe, you know, fluff this up a little bit, pull the collar back, and there is our beautiful tortellini. Yeah, let's do that again. So I'm going to just widen the cheese out a bit, press it together around the sides. Again, you can see that there's more of this tapioca starch here. A lot of that, excuse me, is going to come off in the pasta water. Now this one, like maybe I could have filled it a little bit more, so it's just getting confident with that. Last night, everyone listened to me so well with like less is more that we had a bunch of the filling left over. So don't be afraid to not use all of the filling. You can get, you know, a little bit more adventurous as time goes on, and you might end up using a little bit more of it. So I folded the collar back. I have my thumb here. I do like a little press there. That really helps to get the indent. Wrap the sides of the coat around, a little bit of water, press it together. There we go. One more for good measure. Flatten that out, spread it out to the sides. Press it together. And I'm also trying to decrease the amount of air inside as well. So that's why I like to start in the center here at the top, go around one side, and then work my way to the other side. Fold over the top, thumb in the center, fold over the sides of the coat, tiny bit of water, little press, and there we go. We have our fettuccine, our ravioli, our tortellini, and we are now masters at making gluten-free pasta. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for, if you're following my blog, thank you. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy pasta making. I'll chat with you soon. Bye.